Hello, it's Tom with Digital Foundry. The Last of Us Remastered debuted on PS4 Pro with patch 1.07. As you'll remember, it added 4K support with 30 FPS selected, while running at 1800p with 60 FPS selected. It was a great setup, and one of the more impressive ways to introduce the console's capabilities at its launch. But the snag was the game happened to run worse than the standard PS4 with that 60 FPS mode selected. It didn't matter whether you played with 4K set as the console's output or 1080p. Simply put, it added frame rate drops in places where there were none previously, which I didn't expect at all from a far more powerful machine. The good news then, the new patch 1.08 has landed to correct these performance drops, something I can confirm right away as a success. However, this new update comes with side effects that won't please all PS4 Pro users. In particular, the concern stems from this statement, posted via Naughty Dog's website after the patch went live. It reads, "In an update to The Last of Us Remastered today, we introduced bug fixes and optimizations that will ensure a consistent and high level of performance on the PS4 Pro. Now, when running The Last of Us Remastered on the PS4 Pro on a standard high definition display, the game will run natively at 1080p and offer high quality shadows when running at its high frame rate mode." Now, to be honest, this is an unexpected move from Naughty Dog, a claim that it's backtracking to a native 1080p for users running on 1080p displays. Of course, one of the benefits of the earlier patch 1.07 was the super sampling at that resolution. Whether it was a full 4K or 1800p, depending on which frame rate mode you had selected, you still got the residual improvements to image quality, less shimmering and visual noise even if you didn't have an expensive 4K TV. The implication that this is all gone is a real shame and something we'll cover later in this video. Okay, so here are the facts. Let's start with the 4K modes before moving on to the 1080p side. If you're running The Last of Us with the 4K setting enabled on the PS4 Pro front end, image quality is exactly as it was on patch 1.07. Outputting at 4K in the game's 30fps mode, for example, you get a native crisp 3840 by 2160, the maximum pixel output you could hope for, with high quality shadows too. Nothing else has changed here, and since there were no performance drops from 30fps in the first place at this high resolution, it's great to see it's business as usual. Next up, if you have 4K selected in the game's 60fps mode, you get a native 1800p. As before, it's a low resolution but still looks solid, and we can confirm this combination keeps the lower quality shadows. So again, no change in image quality. However, the criticism I had with this mode on PS4 Pro is now addressed. Performance is much improved compared to the last patch, where we saw surprising drops below standard PS4 hardware. For example, let's run our test clips over again, but with a new entry. The standard PS4 is on left, in the middle we have PS4 Pro on patch 1.07 running at 1800p and in the 60fps mode, and on the right is the same again, but on the new and improved patch 1.08. So I'm happy to report the game runs much more smoothly on 1.08. A fresh pixel count shows it's still rendering out at 1800p, but Naughty Dog has clearly spent time optimizing all these stress test areas, and it's hard to budge it from that 60fps line. The original problem saw PS4 Pro dropping below standard PS4 frame rate levels, but that's not a problem anymore. It goes one better in fact, and people running in this mode will get frame rates as good as or better than the original hardware, and with the perk of running at 1800p. The shadows remain in the low quality mode as expected, but this is precisely what we wanted to see. Improvements over patch 1.07 and also a smoother refresh compared to even the original hardware. Nothing lost and everything gained. Okay, so that's with the 4K option selected on the PS4 Pro front end. But what happens if we boot The Last of Us at 1080p? Well, this is where the more curious changes turn up, and Naughty Dog's statement about using a native 1080p here seems to bear out. Check out this opening shot, first looking at the game on patch 1.07 with 1080p and 60fps selected. In theory, this works by downsampling from 1800p and the jagged edges are smoothed over, but moving to patch 1.08, you see running at 1080p gives you a more aliased image now. This is in 60fps mode, But surprisingly, the downgrade also affects the 30fps mode on patch 1.08. Again, the super sampling from 4K is seemingly removed when compared to the previous patch. That last part is really unexpected, because running natively at 4K and 30fps works brilliantly on PS4 Pro. When hooked to a 4K TV, there are no frame rate drops to fix at that resolution, and the console clearly handles that rendering load well. In this sense, it's a pure downgrade for users with full HD sets hoping to get the most out of the console at 30fps. It's a frustrating turnout. The promise of PS4 Pro was to have more options, but in this case we've lost something that worked perfectly well in 1080p 30fps. As for the 60fps mode, it's something of a mixed blessing. As mentioned in Naughty Dog's statement, the upside to patch 1.08 is that we now have the high quality shadows from the game when both 1080p and 60fps are selected. It's the first time this combination has ever been possible. Whether that's enough to make up for the loss of super sample anti-aliasing is up for debate, but it appears to be a roundabout way to compensate the players using this mode. One issue with this though, as pointed out on forums like NeoGAF, is this high quality shadow setting has a few bugs. Shadows fall inconsistently from characters, for example, or not at all, which isn't an issue with the lower quality shadows. By forcing these higher quality shadows on both 60fps and 30fps modes on patch 1.08, there's now no way to sidestep this glitch. So in summary, no more super sampling at 1080p 60, but high quality shadows with a few issues attached. Meanwhile, there is a second advantage for those running at 1080p and 60fps. By axing that native 1800p, The Last of Us now runs at a locked 60. PS4 Pro now has the horsepower to commit to smoother performance than is possible any other way. It's the smoothest frame rate we've ever seen from the game, and while yes, the loss in image quality is a frustration, it's not a complete step back. For example, check out this battle with the giant clicker. Even on patch 1.08, the game still drops to 50fps on Ultra HD sets. On a regular Full HD TV though, that line just never wavers from the top when using a PS4 Pro. Overall, it's an unusual turnout. We have one problem solved, but another introduced with the axing of features, notably if you wanted to play in 30fps with 4K super sample to a 1080p screen. Equally odd is the treatment of the 1080p 60fps mode. Given the game is now nicely optimized to run at 1800p on patch 1.08, you'd have thought this resolution could still be super sampled for 1080p users, even if with a few drops still here and there. Instead, super sampling is removed outright. We're given the same image quality as the original PS4 version, and the frustrating part is there's no way for players to get this feature back. In fairness, it's up to Naughty Dog to adjust the game settings for the best experience on PS4 Pro. No doubt the team has a good overview of what works and what doesn't with the hardware, but given the feedback to patch 1.08 so far, I suspect most fans would be happier to have more options at their disposal. In particular, direct access to native resolution controls would be handy, rather than triggering it through the PS4 front end. We want something in-game, in other words, perhaps similar to Rise of the Tomb Raider's performance modes on PS4 Pro, which works really well. It would put control back in the player's hands, crucially letting them decide how best to push the machine. Anyway, I hope I've covered all the bases here. Let me know what you think of this, feel free to like and subscribe, and of course feel free to drop by our Patreon page to see this video presented exactly as we intended before uploading to YouTube. But until next time, thanks for watching.
Wow!